My girlfriend said, "It's my money, my choice. Stop having an opinion." I said, "Okay, I understand." I stopped paying for her half of things. I started buying groceries for one. When our mutual friend asked why the fridge was split in two, she was mortified. She suddenly understood the difference between independent and selfish. My name is Julian Hayes. I'm 31 years old, and my professional world is built on data and logic as a systems analyst for a major firm in Chicago, Illinois. My job is to find inefficiencies and implement protocols. I believe that every action has a consequence, and every system needs accountability. I met Chloe, 29, 4 years ago. She worked in digital media sales, driven by ambition and a constant need for social validation. She was vibrant, spontaneous, and financially volatile. I, the steady anchor, provided the security. She provided the constant chaos. For the first few years, we operated under a joint financial agreement. I paid the mortgage and major bills. She paid utilities and groceries, theoretically splitting the cost of living. However, Chloe's income was unpredictable, and her spending was impulsive. My savings account, intended for our future down payment, took constant hits from her large, unexplained withdrawals. When I questioned her, the arguments became brutal. She would flip the script, accusing me of being controlling, cheap, and obsessed with spreadsheets. The conflict peaked 2 weeks ago during an argument about our savings. I had pointed out that her last 3 luxury purchases had wiped out our emergency fund. She erupted, her voice cold and final. "It's my money, my choice, Julian. Stop having an opinion." That statement hung in the air, heavy and definitive. She wasn't asking for freedom. She was demanding a financial parasite relationship under the guise of independence. She wanted full control over spending while maintaining full access to my financial security. I sat there staring at her and realized the argument wasn't about money. It was about respect and the fundamental belief that she could draw from my well without ever refilling it. I did what she asked. "Okay, Chloe," I said calmly. "I understand. If it's your money, your choice, then we operate completely independently." She smiled, interpreting my calm as surrender. She had no idea that as a systems analyst, I was simply designing a new, rigid protocol for our shared life. The old system was terminated. The new system was about to begin implementation. And the first step was a trip to the grocery store, armed with a very small list. The silence after I said, "Okay, I understand," was the signal. Chloe took my agreement as surrender, but I immediately began the systematic dismantling of our joint life. First, the finances. I called the bank and reported the loss of my auxiliary credit card, the one Chloe used for her impulsive, unaccountable purchases. The card was canceled instantly. I then transferred all but $100 from our joint checking account into a new private savings account under my name only. I left the remaining money to cover the last few utility auto payments. The well she thought was bottomless was suddenly dry. Next came the physical separation. I bought a roll of bright yellow painter's tape and meticulously divided the communal areas of the kitchen. A perfect straight line bisected the main refrigerator shelf, the freezer drawer, and the main pantry cabinet. When Chloe walked in and saw the yellow line splitting our food storage in two, she laughed, a sharp, incredulous sound. "Are you serious with this, Julian? You're playing some childish game with tape?" "No, Chloe," I replied, my voice completely level. "I'm implementing the protocol. We are now financially independent." I went shopping that afternoon. I bought only the groceries I liked, organic vegetables, lean chicken breasts, and my specific brand of coffee creamer. I stacked them neatly on my half of the refrigerator, ensuring nothing crossed the yellow boundary. When Chloe opened the fridge later, her side looked sparse, almost empty. The expensive cheese and imported wine she always stocked were gone. They were paid for with my money, and I was no longer buying them. The system was tested immediately during dinner prep. I started cooking my single portion of chicken and rice. Chloe, having nothing prepared, asked me for a handful of my fresh spinach. "I can't share that," I told her, without looking up from the stove. "That's my grocery budget. You'll need to buy your own." Her face flushed, rage mixing with disbelief. "You're going to make me go to the store now for spinach? You're being ridiculous," she snapped. "I'm being independent, as requested," I corrected. "If it's your money and your choice, then the responsibility of feeding yourself is also yours." That night, I sat at the table with my single dinner plate, eating my healthy meal. Chloe sat opposite me, sullenly eating a bowl of cold cereal she found in the pantry. She had asked for independence, and I had delivered it with the cold, analytical precision of a true systems expert. The new system was immediately met with attempts at sabotage. Chloe saw the separate halves of the refrigerator not as a boundary, but as a challenge to be bypassed. She quickly ran out of coffee supplies, things she used to take for granted. Instead of going to the store, she started trying to sneak items from my side of the fridge. I knew this would happen. My protocols accounted for basic human nature. When I suspected my expensive organic almond milk was being used, I placed a small, nearly invisible piece of masking tape across the spout as a tamper-proof seal. The next morning, the tape was carefully peeled back, and the liquid level was noticeably lower than my tracking log predicted. I didn't yell. I just went to my laptop and executed the penalty clause. I transferred the cost of the entire container of almond milk, plus a small fee for system disruption, from our remaining joint funds into my personal account. The cost totaled $30. "Why is my account short $30? She demanded later that day, her voice accusatory. $30 for a small container of milk? "No," I corrected. $30 for violating the terms of the agreement and damaging communal property. She threw her car keys onto the counter in fury. "This is insane. You're charging me for milk? What kind of relationship is this?" "The one where financial independence means financial accountability," I replied. "You said it was your money, your choice. Now you're seeing the cost of that choice." She immediately escalated to psychological warfare. "You're trying to starve me. You're financially abusing me. No normal person tracks almond milk with tape." She attempted to flip the narrative, but her desperation only sharpened my resolve. The escalation moved from food to the unspoken service labor she expected. She used the washing machine, which I pay the electric bill for, and then left her clean laundry piled in the dryer, expecting me to fold it, as I always used to. I quietly folded only my clothes, put them away, and then placed her entire volume of dry, wrinkled laundry neatly back into her abandoned hamper. She found them later and screamed that I was being passive-aggressive and petty. "I'm being efficient," I told her. "I'm performing tasks only for which I have authorized expenditure. Your laundry service was not authorized. The tension in the apartment was suffocating. She was losing the small, invisible services that had defined our relationship, and she was realizing just how much of her independence was subsidized by my quiet servitude." She tried calling her mother, but even her mother advised her not to make a scene over milk. The system I had implemented was working flawlessly, But the system needed one final test: external validation. The real challenge would come when a third party witnessed the bizarre, divided reality she had demanded. The real test of the protocol came on a Friday evening. Mark, a mutual friend who had worked with Chloe for years, called saying he was dropping by to return a borrowed book. He was the perfect witness: observant, slightly judgmental, and not easily fooled by Chloe's charm. Chloe went into immediate damage control. She frantically shoved her pile of unwashed clothes into a closet and tried to wipe down the dining table, her movements jerky with panic. "Don't say anything about the fridge, Julian," she hissed at me. "Just act normal." I agreed silently. Her panic was palpable, reinforcing how much her independence was tied to the public perception of our stability. When Mark arrived, the tension was suffocating. He noticed it right away. "Wow, it's quiet in here," he commented, looking around the orderly yet sterile living room. "Yeah, Julian is just being himself," Chloe replied quickly, forcing a laugh. The inevitable moment arrived when Mark asked for a beer. "Sure, I'll grab one," he said, heading toward the kitchen. Chloe immediately tried to intercept him. "No, wait! Let me get it! I know where the good ones are!" But Mark was faster. He opened the refrigerator door, reaching for the familiar shelf where we used to keep communal drinks. His hand froze mid-air. He stared at the bright yellow tape bisecting the space, the line running precisely between my neatly stacked kale and her single bottle of flat rosé. He slowly pulled out a beer and closed the door, turning back to us with a look of stunned confusion. "What's with the tape?" he asked. "Did you guys lose a bet or something?" Chloe's face flushed a deep, painful red. She had reached the peak of her social humiliation. "Oh, that," she stammered, running her hands through her hair. It's a new system we're trying out. We're focusing on financial independence right now." Mark looked from her side, sparse, almost empty, to mine, organized, well-stocked with pre-cooked meals. He didn't need to be a systems analyst to read the data. "Independence," he repeated, his voice laced with pointed skepticism. "So, you're tracking almond milk now?" He noticed the empty shelf where the communal fruit used to be and the small sign taped above my side. "My items, do not cross." The laughter died entirely. He sat down, placing his beer on the table, the weight of his judgment heavy in the room. Chloe launched into a panicked, defensive explanation, accusing me of being analytic and obsessed with metrics. She tried to regain control by painting me as the villain. But Mark had already witnessed the evidence. The moment she tried to get Mark on her side, I delivered the final, quiet blow to her argument. "Chloe insisted on full financial autonomy," I explained calmly, looking directly at Mark. "I simply implemented the protocol she requested. Every action has a consequence, and I'm ensuring the system is accountable." Mark stayed for only 10 more minutes. When he left, he didn't offer sympathy to Chloe or confrontation to me. He just paused at the door, looked at Chloe, and shook his head. The door clicked shut, leaving Chloe standing alone in the middle of our divided kitchen. The silence that followed was total, and she finally understood. The line in the fridge was also the line that separated her from her entire social credibility. The shock of Mark's visit did what weeks of my silence couldn't. It broke Chloe's defiance. After the front door closed, she didn't scream or argue about the tape. She stood in the middle of the kitchen, her composure completely gone, the humiliation still burning in her cheeks. "Are you happy now?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "You embarrassed me in front of Mark. He's going to tell everyone." The truth embarrassed you, Chloe, I corrected calmly. I just provided the visual aid. The next morning, her rage was replaced by a calculated attempt at reconciliation. She had coffee waiting for me, something she hadn't done in 2 years, and wore a soft sweater instead of her usual sharp professional attire. She wanted to return to the old system. "Look, I was wrong," she began, her voice low. "The tape was childish. Let's remove it. Let's get a clean slate, Julian. I'll start paying for half of the groceries again, I promise. I'll even pay for the almond milk." I knew this was her attempt to regain access to my financial stability. She wasn't apologizing for her contempt. She was trying to buy back the financial services she had lost. I sat down at the table, opened my laptop, and pulled up a specific file. "I appreciate the offer for a clean slate," I said. "But before we wipe the slate clean, we need to balance the ledger." I turned the screen toward her. It was a meticulously detailed spreadsheet titled Accountability Protocol, Cost of Independence. It itemized every large expense I had covered unilaterally in the past year. Luxury trips, she insisted, were work, the enormous shopping spree after her promotion, and the thousands spent on wine and restaurant tabs for her friends. "This is the actual cost of your independence, Chloe," I explained. "You claim I owe you for the time spent here. But this spreadsheet shows I subsidized your lifestyle by over $22,000 last year alone. You want a clean slate? Then we start here." Her eyes raced across the highlighted red numbers. The shock of the precise data made her face go pale. She couldn't argue with the metrics. "I'll pay it back," she promised, desperation entering her voice. "I'll sign a payment plan. Just don't do this. Don't ruin us." "You didn't need a payment plan," I replied, closing the laptop. "You needed honesty. You needed respect. But you chose contempt." I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. "The time for negotiating the past is over. You insisted on independence. I'm simply making that independence permanent." I walked to the filing cabinet and pulled out a single, simple document. "You have 30 days to find a new place to live, Chloe. The apartment lease is solely in my name, and your guest privileges have been terminated. The locks will be changed on the 31st day." Her face crumpled, the tears finally coming. Not the performative ones I was used to, but genuine, agonizing defeat. "You're just going to throw me out?" she choked out. "You walked out yourself when you told me my opinion didn't matter," I said, my voice final. "I just locked the door after you left." Chloe was still standing when I delivered the final, non-negotiable term. Her genuine tears after seeing the financial ledger had evaporated, replaced by a defensive anger she used to mask fear. "I don't care about your spreadsheets, Julian," she spat, her voice tight. "You can't just throw away 4 years. I have rights. I've lived here for 18 months. I have common law residency." I walked to my desk, pulled out a document I had prepared with my lawyer weeks ago, and laid it on the table. It was a simple, formally worded notice. "Our state does not recognize common law marriage, Chloe. You never signed the lease. You contributed sporadically to non-essential utilities, and you are legally classified as a guest. This document is a formal 30-day notice to vacate the premises." Her face went pale, the color draining out as the legal finality sank in. She snatched the paper, reading the dry, unfeeling paragraphs that dissolved her legal leverage. 30 days? Where am I supposed to go? I don't have enough money for a security deposit. "That is a consequence of your financial choices," I replied, maintaining my quiet, even tone. "If your money is your choice, then your housing is your responsibility. She lunged out of her chair and pointed a trembling finger at the refrigerator. You did this on purpose. You cut off the money just to strand me. I cut off the money because you demanded financial independence and simultaneously stole from our savings, I stated. I simply ensured the system you requested was fully operational. She slumped back down, realizing her manipulation had failed completely. She began desperately calling her friends, seeking immediate sanctuary. I heard snippets of her frantic pleas. I need a couch for a few weeks. He's gone insane and evicted me. It's all his fault. One after another, her friends, the people she had spent thousands entertaining with my money, had excuses. One was moving. One had family visiting. Another claimed their apartment lease forbade subletting. The social support system she thought she had built on lavish parties was as fragile as her excuses. She hung up the phone, despair visible on her face. My own friends won't help me, she whispered. They're not your friends, Chloe, I corrected. They were your audience. And they left when the performance got too expensive. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face, appealing to the man I used to be. Please, Julian. Don't do this. I still love you. We can go back to how things were. I promise I'll change. I looked at the woman who had charged me for her independence and mocked my steady work. I can't go back, Chloe. The old system was flawed, and I terminated it. I learned that loyalty isn't purchased through fear of confrontation. You have 29 days left. I suggest you start finding a real solution, because my responsibility to you ends on the 30th day. I stood, gathered the scattered papers, and left the room, leaving her alone with the cold reality of her eviction notice and the neatly divided refrigerator. The 30 days passed quickly. Chloe tried every manipulation tactic she had left. She alternated between tearful voicemails promising to change and angry texts threatening legal action. I answered none of it. My lawyer handled all communication, ensuring the process was clean, professional, and entirely devoid of the emotional chaos she craved. On the 30th day, she was gone. I came home from work to find the apartment silent, sterile, and strangely empty. The expensive clothes, the decorative pillows, the entire side of the pantry she used to fill with wine were gone. The only thing she left behind was the yellow tape, still perfectly bisecting the refrigerator. I peeled it off slowly, feeling a cold satisfaction at erasing the physical symbol of the division she had demanded. The next morning, I was in my lawyer's office to file the official paperwork for the dissolution of our partnership. The process was seamless because the separate fridge protocol had already established the financial boundaries. The court saw two completely separate economies operating under one roof. There was no marital property to fight over, only the matter of the mortgage payments I had covered alone. The divorce was granted quickly. A week later, I received a final, bitter email from Chloe. She detailed her financial distress, the high cost of her new rent, and the ruin of her career due to the trauma I had inflicted. She ended with a final, toxic declaration. You ruined my life over a $30 container of milk. I replied with a single, unadorned sentence. No, Chloe. I ended our arrangement over your contempt for accountability. The realization of what I had gained hit me hard that weekend. The money I had saved, now fully recovered from our joint account, was exactly enough to make a down payment on a small, honest-to-goodness house. The house was mine alone, with a basement where I could store my servers without fear of judgment. I traded the chaos of her sales career and her impulsive spending for the peace of my own backyard. I traded her demands for autonomy, for my own absolute independence. I kept the yellow painter's tape I had used to divide the fridge. I framed it and hung it in my new home office, a permanent reminder of the most valuable lesson I had learned. Sometimes, the best financial decision you can make is simply drawing a line and refusing to pay for someone else's definition of independence. The silence in my new home was not empty. It was loud with freedom, loud with clarity, and loud with the certain knowledge that I had finally won by simply being true to my own logic.